What's up guys, Lifting here with the first Vaal Spark video as promised to some of you guys on this stream. In this video I'm going to show you how you can get started with Vaal Spark in the cheapest sense. It's not going to be cheap. Vaal Spark is not a cheap build to get started with, but in the cheapest sense. And then in a future video I will show off some gameplay with better gear, intermediate gear, and then finally in another video I'm going to show you the build with like the sickest gear, like really expensive gear. But this is the video you need to watch if you just want to get started with Vaal Spark, if you want to do it for dried lake farming, for currency farming. It's really fucking fast. It's probably the fastest build you can play in Path of Exile right now. So, I should say though, it's a terrible boss killer, at least for the higher tier maps, but this is not what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to make a build that can effectively farm Dried Lake, low tier maps too, for currency gain, and the reason it's really good for farming currency is because it's super fucking fast, so it's very time efficient. You can make a ton of currency that way. Now, before I started this, I had no idea how to make a Vaal Sparker, so I asked my, what I consider my good friend, General So, another Path of Exile Twitch streamer. He's been playing a ton of Vaal Spark. I think he has a level 98 maybe, and he's been making a ton of currency by doing that. So I asked him if I could use his build as a template, and that's what I've done. I've then added my own adjustments to what I consider to fit my playstyle, not because they're necessarily better or anything like that. I just like it this way. But General is the guy who originally came up with this build, and I've then based mine off of this. So what you need to do, you need to create an Inquisitor. You can probably get away with other classes, maybe the Elementalist, maybe the Assassin, but it's really hard to beat the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor gets a ton of damage because of Inevitable Judgment, so you ignore the monster's elemental resistances, and you get critical chains and multiplier. You get Instrument's Virtue, which is really fucking good. You get the full potential of this because you move, you can see you get 30% increased spell damage if you cast a spell recently. You do that with Spark, right? Then you get increased attack speed if you've attacked recently, and you get that because you are using shield charge. It counts as an attack, and that's perfect because in a Spark build you really want a ton of attack speed so you can move as fast from pack to pack, so you can keep your Vaal Spark up all the time. And then finally you get Augury of Penitence. It's not too important, but it's still good. And one of the really important things here is that together with Inevitable Judgment, you can make full use of the Call of the Brotherhood ring. The Call of the Brotherhood ring makes it so that 50% of your lightning damage, your spark damage, is converted to cold. And the good thing about that is that when it's converted to cold, you can now shatter enemies. And when you can shatter enemies, you can use Chill of Corruption. This jewel here gives you a 50% chance to gain an additional Vaal Soul per enemy shattered, so you recharge your Vaal Spark faster, and that is really what you want to do. To get more souls, to make it more reliable, you also need, at least in my opinion, at least 2 Sacrificial Harvest jewels here, and try to get them with as good rolls you can. You can probably get away with, if it's just for Dried Lake and you're using 2, you can probably get away with 22, 23, but I wouldn't suggest going lower. The lowest is 20%. And if you're paying for 22%, you'll probably have to pay like 13 to 14 Chaos Orbs at the current time. The Chill of Corruption by itself is 4 Chaos Orbs, so not too bad. And now that we are talking about gear, another thing you need to get is the Voidwalker boots. At least for earlier on in the game. If you get the Voidwalker boots, you get the awesome property of you have phasing if you've killed recently, and then when you have phasing, projectiles pierce. Pierce is insanely valuable as a sparker. If your projectiles don't pierce, they will hit the enemy and then they will disappear. But if they pierce, they can keep going through the monsters and hit multiple ones. So it's very important. If you don't use the Voidwalker boots, you'll have to use the Pierce support gem in your Vaal Spark setup, and you will have to pick up the piercing shots, notable down here, together with these. So it's a lot more points you have to invest. Obviously you get a bit of damage from the Pierce support gem, but in my opinion, unless you have Skyforth boots, then it's not worth taking out the Void Worker ones. These are amazing for Vaal Spark, so yeah, use those. Another item I really recommend is the Choir of the Storm. Now, this is not needed. You don't need this, so if you're on a super budget and you just want to save, then skip this. But if you can't afford it, it's like 15k or something like that, then it's an amazing item because it gives you a ton of critical strike. And the way it works is that critical strike changes increase by uncapped lightning resistance. So any amount of lightning resistance in Merciless above 0 will be counted in as extra crit chains. So if I take off my Choir of the Storm, you can see I have 214 lightning resist here. And I have, where's the crit chains? The crit chains is 52 now without power charges. If I take out the Choir of the Storm, I'm at 37 or 38 close crit chains. So it makes a significant difference. And it, of course, adds that lightning bolt and things like that. It's really fucking good. I should say, the Call of the Brotherhood cost me 7 chaos. It depends on the rolls, right? Other than these uniques, it's also very, very important you get a really fast dagger or a foil, you can do that too. But it's very important that it's fast, because when the weapon is fast, you shield charge faster. And again, I cannot stress this enough, attack speed and moving fast with shield charge when Vaal Sparking is so very important. It is how you keep up your charges, it is how you kill fast. So do not underestimate that. And of course, try to get it with crit chains for spells, spell damage and all that stuff. But just get a weapon that's fast. Other than this, the most important thing is that you get a fairly high energy shield helmet, a fairly high energy shield shield, and a fairly high energy shield regalia or chest piece. It doesn't have to be a regalia. But you do want to get yourself a 5-link. And in that 5-link, you want Vaal Spark, faster projectiles, spell echo, increased critical strikes, and controlled destruction. If you're not using the Void Walker boots, you will have to add in that pierce and get that cluster down here, so keep that in mind. If you get a 6-link, add in added lightning damage here. As for your regular Spark setup, you need to use Spark, spell echo, controlled destruction, and faster projectiles. And in the beginning, when you're using Spark, the mana management can be a little annoying when self-casting the Spark. Not the Vaal Spark, it doesn't have any mana cost, but just the regular Sparks. So for that I use a mana flask here, a sanctified mana flask of staunching, so I can get more damage from my setup here. Otherwise, you can simply, in the beginning, if you're just doing Dryad Lake, you can add in Mana Leech, and then you can solve that issue and use another flask here. That's a potential too, but in the for the long term, in higher level maps, you want to have full damage on your Spark setup. Also get yourself a Diamond Flask. Use that when you're Vaal Sparking, because when you are using the Diamond Flask, you have a higher chance of critting. And when you have a higher chance of critting, the monsters will shatter. And the shatters, as I went over, that gives you the extra souls via Chill of Corruption. So that's important. In the beginning, before you can get yourself a Vessel of Victor, which is insane for this build, by the way. If you can get that, get yourself a Vessel. But you can get away with an Atziri's Promise for a bit of leech, so you get a bit more tanky, right? A Kiara's Determination is really nice. It's expensive. You can get away with not using it, but it's not nice. If you don't use a Kiara's Determination, you can probably use a Valerium Ring, or you can use a Chayula Amulet, but then the problem is you can't use Choir of the Storm. So probably Valerium if you're not using the Kiaras. Valerium is super cheap. And then finally, the Quicksilver Flask here. If you can get an Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline, that's the absolute fastest one you can get. That's the best. But just try to get yourself a Quicksilver of Adrenaline, and then the prefix doesn't matter too much. Oh, and another gem setup I enjoy right now is Curse on Hit, Warlord's Mark, Ice Bite, and Herald of Ice. So with Ice Bite, you generate some frenzy charges when monsters shatter. Warlord's Mark gives you a bit of leech. It's kind of nice, and it gives you those endurance charges. And yeah, with the Curse on Hit, that works pretty well. I also run Discipline for more energy shield, and then Herald of Thunder for more damage. But I'm not entirely sure if I want to run this setup yet. I'm not sure if I feel the Warlord's Mark Curse on Hit setup is worth it, but I will update you on that in future videos. Just play around with whatever you see fit here. Just make sure you at least have the shield charge and fast attack setup and fortify, and the other ones there. Now, as for the skill tree by itself, start here as the Templar. And what you want to get is critical strike chains. The higher critical strike chains, the higher chance you have of shattering, and you make the full out of your inevitable judgment, and you get more souls with Chill of Corruption. You want multi-crit multi for more damage. You want projectile speed. You can get that through Sniper and Ballistic Mastery over here. And you want projectile damage, that's good too. Then you want jewel sockets, and you want them for Sacrificial Harvest, Chill of Corruption. Those are the 3 mandatory ones. I have one up here, that's because right now I'm running around with better gear, and I'm running an additional Sacrificial Harvest. I like that better. And then whatever you can add in here for more damage or whatever, right? And then, of course, just energy shield so you can survive, get yourself to be somewhat tanky. And finally, again, I'm gonna say this, attack speed. Of course, the nodes has to be somewhat efficient, so don't just go for whatever 2% attack speed node or whatever. But things like this down here is super good, because you also get the projectile damage and things like that, Harrier and so forth. And that's really the skill tree. You, of course, go for CI, you go for Ghost Streamer, and then you go for Vaal Pact, so you have really sick leech when you use that Vingtars or whatever form of leech you want to use. You can, if you had a 6-link, add in life leech too if you wanted, but I suggest more damage. So I think the only thing I really need to cover is how you level it. I went with regular Spark and I used Vaal Spark too. It sucks. Don't do that. It was very painful. I died like 40 fucking times or something like that. If you want to level with this, go with Firestorm probably, or yeah, Firestorm, go with that. Until level 69, that is when it's best to swap over, because then you can use the Voidwalker boot, you can use the Choir of the Storm, and so forth. And that's really what you want to go. That's when it starts to feel good, and you can do Dried Lake very efficiently. And then finally, for the playstyle, just make sure you're going fast all the time. Use your Quicksilver when you're shield charging. Make sure you use that Diamond Flask to generate more charges and crits. And well, that's it. I'm gonna leave my own skill tree and general souls guide below, and you can just go with whatever you enjoy the most. Thank you for watching, and bros, do you even nerd?